In the year 2019, in Spain, the disappearance of a man raised alarms for his family and the police. He had left home to meet someone he met online and never returned. For days, there were no calls, messages, or signs of life, until a desperate search led to a chilling discovery. His body was found half buried in a field far from any help. The investigation revealed that it was not an isolated incident but a repeated plan. Fake dates, kidnappings, violence, and extortions. Other men had survived that same method. He did not. What happened during his captivity and the way he died revealed a story of deception and brutality that no one imagined at the beginning. The case of the Badu gang. Every day we coexist with evil. We are witnesses to the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something latent in our society. In Criminal Investigators, we will delve into that dark side of humanity. We will bring the most perverse crimes to the screen and try to enter the minds of those beings who commit the most terrible acts. I am Levi, and today I bring you another case. But before we begin, I want you to tell me where you are watching us from. We really like to know how far these stories reach. Also, don't forget to leave your like and share this video if you think someone else might be interested. And now, let's begin. The events we will talk about today occurred in the year 2019 in Spain and were mainly concentrated in the town of Luceny, a small municipality located in the province of Zaragoza, about 300 kilometers from Luceny, in the Basque country. On the 9th of September 2019, a family went to the police to report the disappearance of José Antonio Delgado Fresnedo. He was an IT executive who worked for a significant company, and his absence was starting to become concerning. José Antonio was 54 years old. He was considered an intelligent person. He was divorced and had a son. At that time, he was living in his parents' house. On the afternoon of Friday, September 6, 2019, José Antonio packed a small suitcase. He took some changes of clothes, pants, shirts, personal items, documents, and his phone. He did not explain to his family where he was going, although he asked them not to worry. He told them that if he did not return over the weekend, he would go directly to work on Monday. During that weekend, there was no contact with his family or friends. Although it was unusual, the situation did not cause immediate alarm. However, on Monday, José Antonio also did not show up for work or contact his office. That was when the concern increased. After several failed attempts to locate him, his family decided to formally report his disappearance to the authorities. Once the disappearance report was filed, the authorities began the initial proceedings to reconstruct the last movements of José Antonio Delgado Fresnedo. As part of that process, it was established that only one person in his circle knew the destination he had taken that weekend. The investigation established that José Antonio had planned to meet a woman he had met through the dating platform Badu. This plan was only known to a friend in his circle. José Antonio's intention was to spend the weekend with her as long as the meeting went smoothly, and that expectation was the reason he left his house that Friday. The tracking of José Antonio's phone allowed them to locate its last signal in the town of Luceny. From there, the investigators reviewed his bank transactions and detected that over the weekend, several cash withdrawals had been made for an amount exceeding 1,500 euros. The withdrawals were made from different ATMs located in the same town. The concern grew when the security cameras of the ATMs showed that the withdrawals had not been made by José Antonio. In the images, a hooded man was seen whose appearance did not match that of the missing person. This finding reinforced the hypothesis that José Antonio might have been a victim of a crime. A few hours later, a man went to the Luceny police station to report a possible fraud related to the purchase of a vehicle. According to his testimony, he had purchased a high-end car that had been offered on a website for a price much lower than the market value. The complainant explained that he met with the supposed sellers, a man and a woman. The man showed the vehicle's documentation and assured that it was in his father's name, who had not attended the meeting due to health issues. He also indicated that the car had been gifted to him by his father, but due to a move abroad, he and his partner had decided to sell it. The buyer handed over 10,000 euros as a down payment with the agreement to pay the rest once the legal procedures were completed. After signing a reservation of ownership contract, he received the vehicle. However, the sellers never contacted him again. Upon verifying the documentation, it was confirmed that the vehicle was registered in the name of Jose Antonio Delgado Fresnedo. This new element reinforced the seriousness of the case and led investigators to consider that Jose Antonio's disappearance was directly linked to a series of crimes committed in the area. Based on the information obtained, the investigators began to delve into the profile of the woman with whom Jose Antonio had arranged the meeting. The analysis of her activity on the dating platform allowed them to detect a pattern that would be crucial for the progress of the case. On the Badu network, the woman used the name Dulce Angel. Upon reviewing that profile and comparing it with other files, the authorities noticed that it was not an isolated incident. That same name or very similar identities had appeared linked to 2 previous reports where men had been summoned in the same area. Both previous cases had characteristics in common. The victims had contacted a woman through Badu, and once there, they were violently attacked. The objective in all cases was the same: to obtain money and goods through threats and assaults. The first of them was a 37-year-old truck driver of Romanian origin who lived in Zaragoza. Through the dating platform, the man had contacted a woman who used the name Daniele Mendoza. In her profile, she claimed to be 24 years old, of Dominican nationality, and showed interest in arranging a personal meeting. The date was set for July 29, 2019, in the same area of Luceni. According to the man's account, the woman asked him to pick her up at the entrance of the town, which he did without suspecting it was a trap. Once inside the vehicle, she mentioned she was cold and asked him to take her to her grandfather's house to pick up a jacket. With that excuse, she guided him through remote roads until they reached an abandoned place. Upon stopping the vehicle, the truck driver was violently attacked by 2 men. He was pulled out of the car, immobilized on the ground, tied up, and threatened with a knife. During the assault, the attackers also used a stun gun to subdue him. Subsequently, the man was placed in the back of his own car and taken to another location. There, he was tied up again and beaten while they demanded he hand over the PIN codes of his bank cards. Under threat, the man agreed to provide the requested information. After that, the attackers threw him into a canal and left the scene. Despite being tied up, the truck driver managed to free himself and seek help at a nearby house. Once safe, he reported the robbery and managed to block his bank cards before the assailants could withdraw money. However, his vehicle was stolen. The second occurred a few days before the disappearance of Jose Antonio. The victim was a 59-year-old businessman residing in the town of Tudela, in Navarra. On September 4, 2019, the man traveled by train to the Luceni station to meet a woman he had met through the platform. On the app, she used the alias Bella and presented herself as Brazilian. A few minutes after the meeting took place, the situation changed suddenly. The businessman received a strong blow to the head with a wrench and, under the threat of a firearm, was forced to get into the trunk of a car. Taken to another place, the man was brought to an industrial warehouse where he was tied up and beaten. As in the previous case, the attackers demanded the PIN codes of his bank cards through threats and physical violence. In a moment of carelessness by his captors, the man managed to escape. Although he had injuries from the assault, there are reports indicating that he was later abandoned in a remote area. The truth is that he managed to reach a rural road where he was assisted by a tractor driver passing through the area. This episode occurred just 2 days before the disappearance of Jose Antonio. With this background, the authorities intensified the search for Jose Antonio. The main hope was that, as in previous episodes, the man had been abandoned alive in some isolated point in the area. For this, a wide search operation was deployed around the municipalities of Luceni and Bocchigneni. Various police units participated in the search tasks, and aerial means were used, including a helicopter and drones, with the aim of covering large areas of agricultural land and rural roads. During these efforts, investigators also made progress in identifying possible suspects. One of the participants in the first attack was recognized when he tried to withdraw money from an ATM. The security camera footage allowed for the identification of a man thanks to a cap and a visible tattoo on one of his legs. It was Jose Antonio Melendez, a 41-year-old man from Barcelona with numerous police records. Among them were offenses related to drug use in public, domestic violence, and an assault on a law enforcement officer, for which he had been previously arrested. 5 days after the search began, a local resident made a report that would completely change the course of the investigation. In a field near the town of Luceni, the semi-buried body of a man was found. Authorities arrived at the scene and confirmed that the body belonged to Jose Antonio Delgado Fresnedo. With this discovery, the search came to an end, and the investigation entered a new phase focused on clarifying the circumstances of his death and identifying those responsible. In that context, and with a court order, the investigators requested from the dating platform Badoo all the information linked to the profiles used to contact the victims in the 3 cases analyzed. From that request emerged the identity of the person who had created and managed the accounts used as bait. It was Jedangeline Candy Arrieta Landazabal, a 34-year-old woman of Venezuelan nationality. It could not be precisely established when she had arrived in Spain, although it was confirmed that upon leaving Venezuela, she left her 4 children in the care of her mother. It was also reported that Jedangeline was in Spain under the status of political asylum. However, posts made by her on social media showed public expressions of support for the government of the then Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez Frias. Before continuing, let's take a quick break. If you're finding this video interesting, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. That helps a lot so we can continue making more videos and telling these kinds of real stories. That said, now let's continue with the story. The investigation also established that Jedangeline was in a romantic relationship with Mohamed Achraf El Bouti. On her Facebook account, the woman had posted on July 6, 2019 that she was celebrating 1 month of being in a relationship with him. Among the comments was a congratulation from Jose Antonio Melendez, already identified as one of the participants in the first attack. Mohamed was also identified as the man who had tried to sell the car owned by Jose Antonio. From these elements, the couple was located and placed under surveillance by the authorities. The investigations revealed that since 2018, Mohamed had been renting an industrial warehouse in the municipality of Pedrola, near Luceni. According to his version, the place was intended for the installation of a car wash. Mohamed, 35 years old, was a Moroccan immigrant with several years of residence in Spain. He had been married and had 3 children. At the time of the events, he was wearing an electronic bracelet due to a court order for domestic violence. Additionally, he had multiple criminal records for offenses such as drug trafficking, assault, burglary, public disorder, and harassment. Meanwhile, the results of the forensic examination conducted on Jose Antonio's body began to emerge. The reports revealed that he had been subjected to an extremely violent assault before dying. The body showed cranial trauma with 3 contusive areas, compatible with blows caused by a rigid object of moderate weight, possibly a tool. Additionally, the forensic experts confirmed the fracture of 9 ribs, 4 on the right side and 5 on the left. According to the specialists, these injuries could have been caused by a strong kick and a subsequent stomp. The man's wrists had been tied with plastic ties, applied with such pressure that they broke the skin. However, no. His hands did not show defensive injuries, leading the forensic experts to conclude that he had no chance to defend himself or resist during the assault. One of the most decisive findings was the presence of dirt and dust in the airways. This element indicated that Jose Antonio was still alive when he was buried in a pit approximately 2 meters long by 1 meter wide and about 50 centimeters deep. The specialists determined that the cause of death was respiratory failure and hemorrhagic shocks. Each of the injuries, separately, would not have been fatal, but the combination of all of them caused extreme pain, difficulty breathing, and blood loss, while the victim remained conscious. These conclusions reinforced the severity of the crime and became one of the central pieces of the judicial process that would follow. On October 2, 2019, with the elements gathered up to that point, the authorities proceeded to arrest Mohammed and Gedangelin. The man was arrested in the warehouse he rented without offering resistance, while the woman was detained in a residence they both inhabited. After the arrests, searches were conducted both in the industrial warehouse and in the residence associated with the couple. Both places were thoroughly inspected, even with the participation of a dog specialized in trace detection. In the warehouse, investigators found the wrench and the gun that had been used in the attack against the second victim. They also found a carbine and a laser-type electric weapon that had been used to subdue the Romanian truck driver in the first case. Additionally, remains of the vehicle that had been stolen and later dismantled were found. Among the seized objects were a golf club belonging to Jose Antonio, a ring, a chain, the keys to the truck driver's vehicles, and Jose Antonio's and 5 other vehicles, as well as 8 men's watches and 13 mobile phones. Traces of blood were also detected at the site. In the house, Jose Antonio's glasses and other valuable items were found, which, according to investigators, might have been stolen from different victims in similar incidents. The investigations confirmed that in the first attack, in addition to Mohammed and Gedangelin, Jose Antonio Melendez also participated, who did not take part in the subsequent events because he was in prison at that time. In November of 2020, the prosecutor's office formally presented charges against the 3 involved in the events, for Gedangelin, Mohammed, and Jose Antonio Melendez. The public ministry requested sentences that, in total, exceeded 50 years of imprisonment. The charges included crimes of robbery with violence, extortion, illegal detention, money laundering, and illegal possession of weapons. So in the specific case of Jose Antonio Delgado, the accusation also included the crime of murder. For the first attack, since 3 people participated, the prosecutor's office added the charge of belonging to a criminal group. The trials were held at the beginning of 2022 in the Provincial Court of Zaragoza. There were 3 separate legal proceedings, one for each case, as the events were judged separately. During the development of these cases, the accused began to be known in the media as the Badu Gang. The first trial to take place was the one related to the attack on the Romanian truck driver. The 3 accused sat in the dock. While the 2 men pleaded not guilty, the woman denied having participated in the events and claimed not to know the victim. According to her statement, she had arrived from Venezuela at the end of May 2019 and met Mohammed through social networks. He assured that he offered her a job as a nanny for his children, and that over time they started a romantic relationship. In her testimony, she maintained that she had no connection with the attack under investigation. During the trials, the statements of the surviving victims were decisive. Both the Romanian truck driver and the businessman attacked days later fully identified the woman as the person with whom they had arranged the meetings through the platform. They both agreed that it was she who got into their vehicles at the meeting place and who led them to the areas where the assaults occurred.
Did the person you saw at that moment, the girl, match the profile picture on Badu?
Not much. In the photos, yes, she was more elegant in a dress like that.
But did she get into your car?
Yes, she got out of the car, opened the door, and then one came from the left and one from the right.
Do you remember if these people had their faces hidden or...
With hoods. The victims recounted in detail the episodes of violence they suffered. In their testimonies, they also pointed out that the woman actively participated in the events. During the trial for the murder of Jose Antonio, the prosecution presented a series of pieces of evidence that were crucial for the verdict. Among them, one of the most significant was the electronic bracelet that Mohammed was wearing at the time of the events. The device allowed for the precise reconstruction of the accused's movements, placing him at the locations where the attacks on the victims occurred, and later at the point where Jose Antonio was buried. The records indicated that he stayed there for approximately 2 hours. In that same place, investigators found a cigarette butt with his DNA, which reinforced the direct connection to the crime. To this evidence were added the data obtained from the mobile phones, which confirmed the presence of both Mohammed and Gedangelin at key locations in the investigation. Also included were images from ATMs where withdrawals totaling close to 1,800 euros were made, as well as the attempted sale of the Mercedes-Benz owned by the victim. Forensic analysis detected the DNA of the accused in Jose Antonio's vehicle along with soil remnants matching those from the place where he was buried. That same soil was identified on a shovel and a pickaxe used to dig the grave, tools that were found during the search of the warehouse. All this evidence, evaluated together, allowed the prosecution to argue that Jose Antonio was detained and subjected to torture between the 6th and the 8th of September, with the aim of obtaining his bank card codes, and that he was ultimately murdered. In contrast, the versions offered by the accused were contradictory. The woman claimed that she had neither stolen nor killed anyone and stated that she had been forced to bring the victims. Sin dasíasi, sin tostas. According to her statement, she was under constant threats and claimed she acted out of fear that they would harm her 4 children and her mother. She also denied having created the profiles on the dating platform and blamed Mohammed for the crimes.
I have not killed anyone. I have always been forced. This man, who is a liar, is a brutal murderer of everything. I did not witness the man's death. He did threaten me. He did force me, okay? He kept me tied up for 15 days and he did have me kidnapped.
I have not killed that man. She has been doing these things long before I met her. Right now, being in jail, she still continues doing the same.
For his part, the man denied that Gedangelin acted under coercion. He claimed that she participated voluntarily in the events and maintained that it was she who ended Jose Antonio's life. In his statement, he indicated that he acted driven by an emotional relationship and fear of her. This exchange of accusations was repeated throughout the various hearings. However, the evidence presented and the testimonies of the victims contrasted with these versions and were key to the jury's final decision. Finally, after evaluating the evidence and listening to the testimonies presented during the hearings, the jury delivered its verdict. The 9 members agreed that the versions offered by the accused were not credible compared to the body of evidence gathered during the investigation. In the case of the attack on the Romanian truck driver, the 3 accused were found guilty and sentenced to 12.5 years in prison for the crimes of robbery with violence, illegal detention, and other associated charges. In the second case, concerning the attack against the businessman from Navarra, Gedangeli Arrieta Lanzada Bal and Mohamed Akraf El Bauti were sentenced to 12 years and 9 months in prison each for the crimes of robbery with violence, injuries, illegal detention, and extortion. For the murder of Jose Antonio Delgado Fresnedo, both received a sentence of 34 years in prison each, as it was proven that the victim was detained, subjected to torture, and subsequently murdered. In this way, the third person involved was sentenced only to 12.5 years in prison, corresponding to the first attack. In contrast, the other 2 convicted accumulated sentences that far exceed 50 years in prison. However, according to Spanish legislation, the maximum effective time for serving sentences is limited, so neither of the 2 main convicts will serve more than 30 years in prison, regardless of the total sum of the imposed sentences. In addition to the prison sentences, the court offered financial compensation for the murder of Jose Antonio Delgado Fresnedo, setting the payment at 327,000 euros in favor of his relatives. To close this case, it is inevitable to consider the risks involved in contacting strangers through the internet. Dating platforms can be a tool for meeting people, but they can also become a space where criminals operate, taking advantage of the trust, anonymity, and expectations of their victims. In this investigation, only 3 cases with convictions could be proven, but the number of stolen objects, phones, vehicles, and belongings found by the police suggests that the real scope of this gang was much greater. Not all crimes are reported, and not all victims manage to survive or identify those who attacked them. The death of Jose Antonio Delgado Fresnedo starkly exposes how far violence can go when someone is completely defenseless. He was held for days, beaten, tied up, tortured, and finally buried alive. He died conscious, breathing and swallowing dirt, in a slow agony that left an indelible mark on his family. This case speaks not only of a crime, but of the real consequences of trusting the wrong person. Behind the screen, there may be someone not looking for a date, but an opportunity to cause harm. And well, dear audience, this concludes another investigation. What do you think about today's case? We would really like to read your comments, as your opinion on the cases is very important to us. Always remember to do it with the utmost respect possible, both for the victim and for the other viewers and us who will be reading your comments. Before you leave, give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to share this video if you think someone you know might be interested. See you in another criminal investigation. Goodbye.